I would actually conduct it with my staff and certainly environmental services. Those are the people that are have probably the most direct contact with it, and write down, ask their opinions. What could we have done better? Build it into your plans for the next time, and then anything that actually uh, was damaged or needs repair, or near misses. Use this opportunity to go to leadership and say, this, I need capital funds to go ahead and do this. You have their ear at this time, and this will be documented. And make sure that it's documented inside your environment of care meetings.
I like that point that you have their ear during this point, maybe in a way that you don't get it in other times and locations.
Right. And so make sure that you actually advocate for yourself for whatever improvements need to be made so it doesn't happen again.
There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin.
I would like to welcome my guest, Paul Cantrell, to the show. Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
Winter weather has had a really big impact across the country, and Paul and I were actually out to lunch, and we were talking, and Paul, as a former Vice President of Facilities and Planning, Design, Construction, as a chief engineer in the maritime world, where he traveled the ocean before he transferred over to healthcare facilities management. Paul and I were talking about this, and Paul's entire career really is based on preparation, anticipating the unknown, being ready for whatever comes your way. So as we were talking, I said to Paul, wouldn't it be great to do an episode, 15 to 20 minutes in length, where we just talk about being prepared for whatever the weather throws your way. We've got a lot of weather coming our way. And we also know, right, Paul, we also know that as the healthcare facilities management industry continues to struggle with bringing in people who have worked in hospitals and who have worked in healthcare, one of the big risks they have is not only the Environment of Care and Joint Commission, but also handling winter weather. And Paul is a great guest to have on. As I said, he has retired, but he's still doing consulting, still working in the world. So Paul, thanks for joining. Before we hop into the topic of being storm ready, preparing for ice, snow, winter weather, anything to add to my little inelegant introduction there?
No, hopefully that the only thing that this would do is would bring a sense of awareness to what potentially are the risks. And most of our discussion happened to be that it's probably not to the people of New England or northern United States. It's to the people that are unfamiliar with what this is, because it'll catch you by surprise. It's not things that you normally prepare yourself for. Normally it's the high temperatures that people down south actually have in a battle, and we're whacked with sub-zero temperatures occasionally, and it will bite you in the rear. And if we can just kind of point things out, a couple of little tidbits that you might be able to take away, it'd be great. But these are things that you may not have thought about before. We all have had emergency preparedness and incident command drills through your years, but this is a little bit different. It's different than handling it under having a paper drill. And this is This is more like maybe putting it on a checklist for yourself, just to say, let's just think of and walk it through.
As Paul and I were talking about this, because we could really go in so many different directions, to do is to segregate it into like 3 parts of the conversation. You know that ice and snow is coming. You know that winter weather is coming. So what do you do pre-event? How do you prepare? And then once we're through the pre-event, the storm is occurring. What do you do during the event? What can you do? How do you react? How do you manage your building? And then what's sometimes forgotten is post-event. So what do you do once the event is passed? Maybe your sub-zero temperatures are here, but you're left with 2 feet of snow on the ground, even though the sky is blue. So we want to look at pre, we want to look at during, and we want to look at post. And I'll object to one thing Paul said there. Paul said that this might be for people who are just learning the world. But I'll say too, Paul, I think that just even as a nice refresher, like folks who have years of experience, if you got 30 years of experience, sometimes it's always nice though to pick up what's somebody else doing, or what can I miss. So I would say, and it's the TV producer in me, I would say that I think there'd be nuggets to learn for anybody, even if you've been doing it for 30 years, or even just to confirm, you know what, that's what I am doing. I'm in good shape. So with that said, Paul, I won't contradict you any other time during this conversation. Let's look pre-event, please. Ice and snow readiness. What should a director of FM, a manager of FM, what should a facilities management department be doing when they know inclement weather in the form of snow and ice is on the way?
Well, I think first of all, you want to make sure that you've identified and thought it through as far as what are my biggest risks? 1, freeze. 2, power stability. And 3, I would think that is staff availability. Where's my support going to come from? So let's just take power just to start with. Obviously, because of regulations, and I know that you're conforming to them, which is making sure that your generators are actually run in tip-top shape. They've been maintained, and the fuel quality is there in that you've already maintained your 96-hour requirement. But if you know that this is coming, you know that it would, if you need to to use your generators, you're going to start to consume it. Well, you've been tipped off, a few days beforehand. Go ahead and actually top off your tanks, even though it's going to give you more than the 96 hours. It's just a good thing to go ahead and top it off. I would also recommend is make sure that you have identified where are my substations, what substations feed this hospital. Every hospital, has 2 lines that should be coming in. Take a look down there. Take a drive or a walk through down where the lines pass. Be observant. See, have the lines been cleared away from the power lines, from tree branches. Where is my risk? Know where this comes from. And then, because one of the things is, that whether it's, a snowstorm, an ice storm, or a hurricane or whatever, just a very bad storm altogether with somebody driving in, I don't know how local you may be to, let's say, a mall. Well, there's an awful lot of people going up and down the street. They can be hitting poles. That's where, instability. Where's my risk? Understand that. But also, certainly when it comes to, ice storms, one of the biggest things is that you've got lines or trees, limbs that fall down and, create a quick short. It may be better to consider and have this discussion with leadership beforehand and say, if it gets bad and it gets in, a little brownout here, another little brownout, because what those brownouts do is they send bad voltages through your building, and they can affect all of your electronics. One of the things to consider is I will take all of my emergency loads and transfer them over to my emergency generator. If your system, the electrical system, becomes a little bit too unstable, consider that. Then there's, heating, water, and life safety. Where's the biggest risks in those systems? Well, obviously your sprinkler system. Usually that's the one that actually catches you by surprise. Why? It's because water, it's standing water, it's untreated water that is sitting in your pipes. And if your particular area hasn't been exposed to, these severe cold weather patterns, you might be a little bit more at risk, especially with the age of some of the pipings in all of the older community hospitals. What's above the ceiling? Where would that be? In the vestibules. Vestibules between your first set of doors and your second set of doors. Even though there may be a little bit of heat there may be no means of heat getting up above your ceiling. So you may want to consider taking out a small panel here or a small panel over there so that there is heat going through that vestibule to get up to the ceiling, because that vestibule projects out of the building. So you have the two sides, and you have the temperature that's being exposed from the top as well. And there may be, and usually like what happens in a vestibule, they'll have metal ceilings and metal panels, and that is actually insulated. Well, that's great. The problem happens to be is you have a void area of 2 feet all the way across to an exposed area. So make sure that you take that into consideration. Think about your heat tracing systems. Are they turned on in whatever areas that you may have it? Or, let's say a condensate return line, or even just an eye wash station line that you need to feed. Remember, what it is that is most at risk is it's untreated, non-moving water. If it's moving, even if it's a little bit, it's less likely to go ahead and freeze. Another major area to be looking at is loading docks. Make sure that the heating system works in your loading docks, and have a discussion with the people in materials management as well as security to say, make sure that those doors are only open long enough to to receive whatever items there need to be. It still happens. Occasionally they'll forget about it, and they'll walk into the other space and forget that the door is actually open. Because I think everybody's materials or supply area, it's very similar. It has usually a space, a debarkation area, and then you can go back into your main storage areas. Think about what you have access to as far as space heaters, temporary space heaters, but make sure that they're of the hospital grades. They're not that that effective, but you have to make sure that from a fire perspective that you're not introducing another potential problem.
We know, especially in office spaces, people are always bringing in their heaters. Maybe they put them down at their feet, they plug them in. Maybe they've daisy chained all these cords together to get their heat. You're a new director. You're somebody who's coming in, and you're walking around your space and you see these things. What should they look at, they being the new director? Because there's got to be a proliferation of heating sources now. What should they be looking at to understand or to know if it's even allowable in a healthcare space?
It should actually already be in their policies and procedures within the hospital, because these are things that are actually inspected for by Joint Commission and DNV. Those are very unsafe. In fact, it's been a progression over the years that you would kind of walk through and you'd find out that, hey, materials management ended up getting them something, or even in their own facility staff, that they came in and they gave them gave them heaters. It was like, where the heck did this come from? Oh, it came from your facility staff. It was like, and the facility staff, if they're not properly trained, they're doing it for the right reason, to provide comfort, because if you had 10 people in one room, there's going to be varying answers to what my comfort level is.
Yeah.
We all know that. We've all seen it. It's like, wait a minute, it's still 70 degrees, but at that 70 degrees, I may not be satisfied. So we know that happens, and it's all trying to be done for the right reasons, but you have to actually confiscate them. You cannot allow that to happen. These things slowly, come into play when there is a problem in the, with their systems, or a weakness to the air handlers that are in there, or whatever. That's how they usually infiltrate over the years. But the thing is that you have to start to go through and look for them, and then confiscate them, and you just say that you're enforcing your own policies.
Yeah.
Because every hospital has that built into their policies. The thing is, it's whether or not you're actually instituting it. But the problem happens to be is that, okay, I'm taking them, and sometimes the facility staff give them so that they don't have to, answer the nuisance calls.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
You're going to take those away. You now have to have that in your back of your mind, and you should be putting it onto some sort of paper. This is where I found it. This is where I found more than one. Maybe you might have been, trying to address, lack of capacity. Who knows? But you're going to have a follow-up to it, and then create an action plan for it.
I like the word infiltrate. They infiltrate over time. Two other questions before we kind of move away from the preparation. Suppose, Paul, that somebody just heard what you said, which is all really good. Your electricity, your lines, your tracing, your plumbing lines and all. But suppose somebody's like, I don't even, because we know this, right? That there's not every organization has good as-built. Not every organization has plans. Not every person who's thrown into this director role even knows where they should look. Any advice for that person?
One of the things, even though you're using the equipment all the time, which is your air handling units, you got to also make sure that you've gone through, your building automation system, and made sure that all of your free stats are fully functional. Now, sometimes people in your own staff will have gone through and turned off a free stat because they were trying to get past and handle the situation. Well, the problem happens to be is if you go through an event like this, you're going to be coming back to work when everything starts to thaw out, and you're going to need to replace coils within the AC units, within a good percentage of your AC units, and they will go, and they will go fast, especially if they're untreated. In other words, untreated being no glycol, in your system. So be very aware of that. Make sure that you've taken the time to look at all of the air handling units. Try to understand, try to think about your building and say, okay, how is this constructed? Do I have any exposed pipes that are outside, including insulated pipes? People have walked on insulated pipes and cut back insulation to get to something, and not gone back and appropriately, fix that line. Make sure that you've actually inspected it, but those are on the outside. Think about lines that are actually on the outside of the building, but on the inside. So, but on the outside wall.
Like
so it's on the inside within the wall, but where they may have, run a sink and put in a new sink. Well, that area right there, let's say behind the sink, where they had, brought these lines up, is the hot and cold water. Think about what needs to be done there. I don't know how much exposure it is, but try to consider it. Most lines are usually brought up on the, within the inner wall so that they're protected. And one of the things that you could do is, if you had to, is you just open up the valves of the hot and the cold water, and you just a slight movement, or a very small stream of water coming out of both the hot and the cold. Same thing for whether it's a toilet or an eye wash station. Consider it. Especially let's say in your mechanical rooms, you've got an eye wash station, nothing's moving, and it's in my mechanical room, which I have these big open vents to go ahead and supply the air into my equipment to help cool. Do I need to pull back my dampers so that there's a little bit less coming into the mechanical room? Also check the fire pump room. That's a mechanical space by itself. How is that set up? Is this open to outside air? Is there going to be anything running? Where's my sensor lines? Make sure you've checked those. Another thing to consider is when it snows, it's going to end up on the roof. One thing that a lot of people do take for granted is that our roofs are built strong enough to go ahead and hold the load. Now, you may go through and you say, oh yeah, well, we've never had a problem. Okay, well, the only thing that you usually think of is maybe, where's my leaks? One of the things that you have to take, you've got to consider is how much of a load is it going to be? Because it could be, it snows, and then after the snow, it ends up with a slight, rainstorm, and then it goes back into a deep freeze. Well, all of that water didn't drain. It actually just compacted that snow. Then it froze. Now it's going to end up with, say, with another, following, system that comes in and snows again. How much of a load is my roof going to be able to withstand? Be aware of that. You may end up getting to a point where you have to, and this is going to sound weird. I mean, I know that when I came into the healthcare world, 20 plus years ago, I was like, you want us to shovel off a roof? I'd never had to be exposed to that, but yeah, you may have. We've actually done it with snow. We've had snow blowers, but you have to have the right type of roof in order to have a snowblower up there. You have to know which roofs to do it. You have to have safety equipment up on the roof to, for your staff. And then you have to have full knowledge of where it is that I'm going to throw this, whether it's that or whether it's, throwing snow off of a parking garage. Where am I putting it? I can't do it over an opening. I can't do it over a walkway. I have to make sure that there is not going to be any personnel below there when you throw it out. So, and then before the storm, you actually make sure that you end up putting up enough de-icing. So let's say ice melt to be able to go ahead and get out to a rooftop, air handling unit. Have a shovel, have a bucket. Here's my extra, ice melt, so I can go ahead out there in the middle of the storm. Because as well as I do, these things don't go down in the middle of fine weather. It's always in the worst of weather, whether it's the peak of the heat or it's the most severe lower temperatures. Make sure that you're planning for 24/7 coverage, but that also means for somebody hospitals that don't have that have limited staff, reach out to your contractors. Consider having discussions with them to say, I need to have other people here. I need somebody that, number one, is going to know your HVAC. These are the people that are going to be, more than likely are going to have to respond with intelligence of those types of systems. So you have to have somebody that knows your electrical system, and somebody that's knows your HVAC and building automation system. Make sure that you've done that beforehand. And then make sure that you have the appropriate PPE, for your staff, or whoever's covering this. During the event, obviously, you're watching your electrical, and then if you have the brownouts are a little bit too, or brownouts or blackouts, whether it's flipping on or flipping off. Truly consider putting your system, all of your emergency system on emergency generators. It has certainly helped me through the years of some severe storms.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us.
Was it the severity of the storm? How did you judge whether or not to flip it over or not? Was there a threshold for you?
If there was a couple just in an hour where we ended up going through these brownouts, and one of the reasons why, it's because usually that you have the brownouts because a branch has gone down on your supply lines. A branch has gone down and crossed two phases, right? And with that, even though you have protections within your system and you have protections that are out there at your substations, there's still a bit of that charge that goes through. And I've watched it. I mean, we've done a number of repairs over the years that you end up getting whacked, but certainly with the sophistication of all of the air handler units and the building automation system that we have and all the electronics that we have, maintaining all of our systems, whether they're chillers, whether they're the control panels for your boilers, or all of the controls that are outside in your system, they get whacked, and you end up losing a number of different pieces of equipment. And you would say, well, how did that happen? Well, they become so irregular in failure because it could be anywhere within the context of the hospital, and because your safeties, which are breakers, or the safeties within the utility company, don't react fast enough, you get that spike through your system. So I would actually make sure that during the event, make sure that you obtain knowledge of where you are at with drifts, the height of the snow, where the wind is coming from, and where it's blowing to. Because you've got air handlers on the roof, you've got air handler intakes on the sides of whether it's the hospital or clinics or whatever it is that you're at, or they could be freestanding beside the hospital. And make sure that when you're looking at those things, don't forget about your emergency generator. And the reason why is, number one, what's the infiltration of the snow going in? If it's to the air handler units, the biggest risk is going to end up being two things. One is potential freezing of your coils. Second is that your intake filters get completely soaked and plugged. And once they get wet, which does not normally happen, if you're not monitoring it, it can freeze up on you. So be aware of where you're at, and make sure that people are actually continuing to monitor their equipment. Certainly taking walkthroughs through the mechanical spaces, around where the vestibules are, around the loading docks, and construction sites, because construction sites, you kind of forget about it. I've been out of that construction site for the last month and a half, and it's still closed off. No, well, somebody better be getting in there, because every single system that's over there is dead. In other words, it's not moving within pipe. And then make sure that there's plenty of communication back and forth to incident command. But to a lot of manipulations during this time, in manual overrides could occur during these events. Make sure that anything that is manually overridden, whether it's physically out in the plant or electronically within the controls, make sure that there's a log. And there's a few reasons why. Number one is you have to put it back into your normal state of what it was before you went into this. Number two is there should be an action plan that somebody says, okay, why did we have to do this? let's find out what the root cause of this is, and so make a long-term plan to go back, so we don't have to do that, or somebody wouldn't have to do that in the next time. And this should be that your system should all be in the ready state 24 hours a day. And so everybody, believes that it is. But if you went over there and you made an adjustment and without logging it down anywhere, and the next person that comes in to try to troubleshoot it, well, I didn't realize it, but somebody closed down on one of the valves, or put a limit on it, or overrid it. It's a terrible way to work. So make sure that you end up, logging those down. And the first thing is when you're coming out of this, because the biggest risk is going to end up being not that you got through the temperature, because the following day, that following morning, hey, guess what? The sun's coming up and it's bright out, and it's going to end up being 45 degrees. Oh, from 5 degrees above zero, it goes to a 45 or a 55 degree day. It's happened here. It's happened in New England. Guess what? The surprises are going to come. The things that you didn't account for. Well, it was the sprinkler line that was it was the last elbow it was the last sprinkler head in the line. It was down in the corner of a building, and it was above the ceiling. Well, it's been there for 25 years, and that in this storm it ended up blowing. That's what's going to that's when it's going to happen. Be prepared for that. Continue monitoring it. Don't take it for granted, especially if it's even coming into a weekend. Have personnel there so that you're actually helping support. Be able to react to it.
Just thinking, just thinking back as a weather nerd, what was it like? 2023, was it 3 years ago when we got where it went down to 15 below, 20 below on a weekend? Yeah. And remember, you heard the reports of sprinklers busting everywhere.
Oh, I was in it.
Yeah, right. Were you on site that weekend for most of it?
Well, one of the hospitals I oversaw was it was actually some of the things that I'm even speaking about right now here. It was a community-based hospital that we had, was a member of our system, had blown a leak, blown a pipe. It actually was what I was just speaking to, which was a line that was in the corner of a building with 3 sides that were exposed, being left, right, and above in a void space that had been there. I mean, the piping had never changed, but just got to it in the right place, and got cold enough to go ahead and freeze. Well, so I was already down there. Well, one of the things that you don't want to forget about are the other outbuildings, the clinics, the ground shops, the security buildings. As you go through, one of the things that, because you are manned 24/7 here at the hospital, you're not over there, and maybe not as your staff may not be, I guess, educated as to what the systems are and where the lines go.
There can be a
it's
difference.
Difficult, but make sure that you're thinking about whatever it is that you're setting up for protections at the hospital, that you've set them up over there as well, and continue to be monitored.
Especially on a weekend where those outbuildings aren't probably in use, and you've always got people in the hospital, but not out there.
Right. And then coming out of it, certainly you got to go through you still have to go through, all of your mechanical rooms, making sure that those
we're talking post-event here.
This is the post-event coming out.
Okay.
You've got to make sure that you document, all of your near misses. What were the temporary repairs that you did that you kept a log of?
Can you give an example of a near miss you would chronicle?
Yeah, you could have gone out there and there could have been a drift that was actually occurring just outside of the emergency generator, and it had actually gone up to the inside, to above the height of your emergency generator air intake. It's like, whoa, we got to clear that away. It almost happened. Nothing shut down because of it, or nothing exploded because of it. Another thing would be on another corner of a building, we had a gas heater, gas hot water heater, and it had gas hot water heater. You have an intake and exhaust, and It was under where the intake and exhaust were, happened to be in a particular point around the building where because of the direction of what the wind was, it came around the end of the building, swirled, but where that swirl occurred, that happened to be on a corner of this particular building, and within that inverted corner, you had the intake and exhaust from the units. Walked around it, and it was kind of like, well, wait a minute, where's the pipes? The pipes were under probably another foot and a half. We were under another foot and a half of snow above the intake and exhaust from the gas hot water heater. So we dug that out. And actually, as it turned out, luckily, that what it had done, it hadn't kicked itself off yet. Most of them, certainly all the newer ones, they will have safeties to go ahead and shut itself off. But those are something else. That's another near miss. Okay, to make sure that makes it onto your list of what my rounds are. Make sure that doesn't happen again.
When you're out walking around, obviously, if you got a lot of snow, sometimes you can't always do this. But relative to the exterior of the building envelope and your hardscapes, your parking lots, your walkways, everything that leads up, what should you do post-storm? I imagine at a minimum, you're out there checking things out, make sure you don't have potholes that are developed. But what should you be doing? What should you be focusing on exterior of the building?
I didn't really go into any of the, it's parking lots or anything else, because, all right, that's a whole different ballgame. And, I would have limited what my parking availability was going to end up being, so that you can maximize and clearing it, and getting almost everything that you can off. Obviously, prior to the to the event, you need to go ahead and get dispense with putting out all of your ice melt, snow melt, sand, shovels in the appropriate at just about every single entrance or exit, or if you can, limit the entrance, the open entrances to both staff and patients and visitors. Prior to the event and during the event. Prior to the event, outside in the parking lots, certainly, every single campus has different undulations, right? Well, one of the biggest surprises that one of the biggest things that could potentially happen is around the loading dock and the trash dispenser area. Those both are out on the pavement. Well, you have main drains that are outside of the building. Well, certainly with trash, debris, winds, that could all be swirled up, could get wet, and end up on the parking lot itself. That could make its way over to the drains. That drain, you could find yourself, depending upon what the grades are around your facility. You could end up waiting out there trying to get to it because enough trash came out of the dumpsters or was not properly picked up beforehand, and around the grading itself, it's now plugged, and now everything is melting.
Great point.
So don't forget to make sure that you have checked all of those.
Sounds like you speak from a little bit of experience with that one.
Yeah. So obviously, going back to coming out of it, you put everything back to normal. Conduct a debrief. I would actually conduct it with my staff and certainly environmental services. Those are the people that are have probably the most direct contact with it, and write down, ask their opinions. What could we have done better? Build it into your plans for the next time. And then anything that actually was damaged or needs repair, or near misses, use this opportunity to go to leadership and say, this, I need capital funds to go ahead and do this. You have their ear at this time. And this will be documented, and make sure that it's documented inside your environment of care meetings.
I like that point, that you have their ear during this point, maybe in a way that you don't get it in other times and locations.
Right. And so make sure that you actually advocate for yourself for whatever improvements need to be made so it doesn't happen again.
Where did you like to be? Where did you like to stay? How visible were you during it?
Oh, it depends upon how bad the storm was. I mean, if it was an ice storm, I've planted myself right there in the facility operations room, going through the building automation system. Ended up going through performing inspections or on the campus with snow removal, checking out things out on the roof, helping document whatever I needed to do. But then I actually was in charge of multiple hospitals, and I was actually going from campus to campus. And I might take a walk through, certainly go down through the main control room, and then go through whatever they might have found, and found out what their difficulties were, and then take a quick through some of the hot spots within each of the hospitals, and then drive to another hospital to see how that one's doing. Yeah.
So it sounds like throughout whatever phase you're at, the importance of documentation and not just kind of moving through this thing, problem solving, but moving through it and creating documents and post-action and pre-action so that you can be better the next time.
That's critical. I mean, anybody can get through it. I mean, but how many times do you want to be there? How many people do you need to go ahead and put your finger in a hole in a dike? That's not being helpful. That's not being a leader. You want to make this so that this is operationally fully functional, to reduce the amount of risks, because the situation could be different next time, and it may. I mean, the storm came from the east, and it was plowing toward the west. Well, guess what? It could be a southwestern wind, and that could be open up a whole set of different problems.
Yeah, it's very true. And you probably through your maritime career, you had to be observant of it all the time. But just even like knowing the wind direction and knowing what that wind direction causes for your building, because all winds not equal and all directions aren't equal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we used to. I mean, I can say that certainly during major thunderstorms, that was one of the big things. We okay, well, what roofs were in the worst condition, and then we would try to identify where the leaks coming from, and you would get to a certain point. And certainly, this was when I had first just gotten to this one particular hospital, and try to make a list of every single leak that there was, and say, okay, afterwards, this is what we're going to do, and then we'll start to pop ceiling tiles and get up above the ceilings and find out, well, where the heck could this have come from, or try to do this even during the event so that you can see where the water's coming from. Well, and then we ended up making a plan. All right, this is the roof that needs to be replaced. This roof over here could be repaired. This is what it is. This is where it's exactly where it's coming from, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then you get down to the short list. It was like, wait a minute, nothing leaked for the last 5 storms or major storms. Well, what it was actually wind driven. It was coming in from the side of the building, which we didn't know until we got to this particular point in time, and it was by tracking them, because we did it by event. We did it, so what's the follow up? Where is it coming from? It was a learning experience. So
Now, I mean, even I obviously don't have a hospital that I'm accountable for, but like even with my house, I kind of know which wind direction I'm going to get a leak. Because you just you observe, right? And that's one of the critical skills in your role as a director. Like, it's easy to just kind of go through motions, but the observation, the documentation, getting to know your building. And, as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking, this is really one of the things we're dealing with in a negative way, because we're losing that institutional knowledge that comes from dealing with snowstorms, ice storms, thunderstorms. And what does this event mean for me if it's coming that way? Those people are walking out the door, which goes to why you document during the storm so you can pass it on. Last question to Paul Cantrell, former vice president of FM and PDC, and a maritime chief engineer. What was, Paul, is there a storm that sticks out in your mind for its severity that you went through and managed through? Is there a memory for you that sticks out of something that was?
It wasn't the one ashore, because those were all easy.
It was the one that was offshore?
Yes, it was offshore.
What was it?
I was in a hurricane, and we were in some.
Where were you?
Some pretty bad. It was in the Mediterranean. The winds were howling. We had 35 foot seas. And when I say 35-foot seas, we were on a tanker at the time. The tanker we had 10 foot of freeboard, so that meant 10 feet from the flat water's edge to the main deck. We had waves that were coming down the main deck that were 20 to 25 feet above the main deck.
Wow.
And
what's that like?
It's very powerful. You don't understand. You don't know until you've kind of gone through that and just actually seen it. I mean, I had been in a number of hurricanes before then. Actually, that was one of the earlier ones. But this ripped off. It ripped the section. The seas had actually ripped the section of the bow, ripped the bulkhead right away from the main deck on the forecastle.
Wow.
And then there were, being on a tanker, all the pipes are exposed going down through the center line of the hull. But it was a lot of repairs while we're underway, and trying to get ourselves ready to come back into port, and we had to make the best of it.
I've always wondered, when you're in something like that, like, there's nowhere to go, right? I mean, you just have to ride that out. In your mind, what's that like? Like, when you're just stuck and you're gonna be there, do you look to an ending, or are you just kind of in the moment saying, okay, this is what I got to do to get to the next moment? You know what I mean with that question? Like, can you allow yourself to think of being out, or are you just kind of trying to survive in the moment?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's only a certain amount of hours that you're going to be able to put into it, and you might be up to 20, 24 hours, and say, okay, but is there anything else that we didn't, that might have broken free? I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, it could be oxygen or acetylene bottles that are actually, break free, out of whatever rack system you may have had. Or you have all of these drums of different lube oils that were, spread around because you're in the world trade. You weren't in just, running up and down the coast where you can almost go to a shopping mall. So, sorry, you had to take all of these extra barrels and everything else. Well, those are 55-gallon drums of oil. One of those things breaks down, it does a lot of damage. Even though you've chained, you didn't have enough chains to do all of them individually, so you wrap a whole bunch of them. Once that starts getting hit with waves, and forget about it. I mean, even if it's down in the engine room and you've had stuff that was, in place for a while, but you've been in relatively calm seas, and all of a sudden you end up with, there's another one, actually, I'm just thinking. I was in another hurricane, and we had 50-foot. The captain came into my office and he says, "Well, let's go check. Have you ever seen a 50-foot wave?" And I said, "No." It was about 8:00 at night. I was still at my computer, and so he said, "Let's just go out here and take a look." We walked out there, and he says, "Well, go find the top of the wave." I had the flashlight, and I was like, and I was looking up at it, and I was like, that was over 50 foot. And I mean, we knew it. I mean, I'm sitting at the computer with my legs spread apart like this, trying to actually type, and I'm trying to hold myself in place at the position, at my desk. And everything in my office is trying to move.
Yeah.
That's actually another experience, is to observe. I mean, usually what happens when you end up going to sea for a long period of time, and you have calm weather, you become lax. And if the mates don't tell you, hey, we're going to be hitting some, bad weather, it's like watching your entire living room go from that side there, whip across over to that side, and then 30 seconds later, 15, 20 seconds later, it's on its way back. And now you've got to go tackle each piece of what's been, flying across your room. It could be everything that was in your bookshelves. It could be, chairs, and the chairs aren't. The chairs have some substantial weight to them that are in your office, but they're all flying across on a VCT, flooring. It's eye-opening.
Fun memories, huh?
Yeah.
So Paul Cantrell, thank you for making us storm ready. I really feel like a goofy TV person with that. Thanks for making us storm ready. Thanks for your insights. I appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure.
This is Peter Martin for the Healthcare Facilities Network. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we will be back in the future with another episode. Take care.
If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.